So when you first open up Logic Pro, you'll see something like this, and you can create a new empty project. There's also templates over here, and I also have a place for my templates. You can eventually save your own templates here. So we'll do new project, and we'll do choose, and then it's going to open this up, and it's going to prompt you to create a track right away. So you can have it be an audio track if you're going to record your microphone or maybe a guitar or something, or you can do like MIDI if you're using a virtual instrument, like a software instrument. So we'll choose that here. We also have session players here, which I'll cover in a little bit. And then there's pattern as well, which I don't use too much, and I'm not going to really cover in this video. So we're going to choose an instrument. We're just going to use the default patch here, which I believe is like an electric piano, classic electric piano. And one thing I love about Logic is just how easy it is to use instruments, like a MIDI keyboard here. I can just plug this in with a simple cord that plugs straight into my laptop, and it will play right away. So let's do that now. Then one of the first things you're going to do is you want to go up to Logic Pro here and go to settings and then choose audio. And we're going to make sure we're going to select our output and our input correctly. So our input is going to be my interface here, which is my iRig Pro Duo. And so that's what I want, so that I can record this microphone here. And right, we don't need anything for the MIDI keyboard because that's just plugged straight into the laptop, and that's just going to read without doing anything else. We don't have to set up anything for that, which is awesome. Then there's the output device. So how are we going to hear what we're playing? So if you have speakers, you can select those. So if I wasn't recording my screen, so I'm recording my screen, so I have a multi-output device, which lets me, hear the output of my computer, and also lets me like hear myself, and it lets my screen recording software hear the output. So you wouldn't have that. You would just choose probably your interface again. So you're hearing that. So you're recording into your interface, and you're coming out of your interface, and you're hearing that. And if you don't know what an interface is, this video actually is part of a series. It's my Status Studio Ever series, where I'm walking through how you can go from knowing absolutely nothing to creating a song from scratch and publishing it and having it sound amazing and professional using budget equipment and free or stock plugins. So in an earlier episode, episode 1, I believe, I go through what is the actual, minimum gear you need to get started producing music. And one of those things is an audio interface. If you want to learn more about that, just click in the description below to go watch that video. So then we got buffer size here. And if we're recording, we want it to be a lower buffer size if like we're recording vocals, so like 128 or 256. And then if we're more doing post-production, mixing, applying effects and stuff, we'll do like 124, the highest we can do. So I'm just gonna leave it here right now because I'm not gonna be recording any vocals or anything. And by the way, if you ever find yourself running into like system overload problems or computers having a hard time handling all your processing, I have a full video breaking down how to optimize Logic so that you're getting the best settings and the best performance. I'll have that linked below as well. Now, if we go to advanced here, you're gonna wanna make sure you check enable complete features, but you definitely want this on so you can get the full range and array of all the tools that Logic offers you. So make sure that's checked on, and that's good. We're good to go. We don't have to set these again. These are kind of set it and forget it, and we're good. Actually start creating our track. It's good to set the tempo. So you can just do that right up here. We can set the tempo here. So by default, it's at 120. We can also click this little drop down here, and we can see the tempo here, and we can change this as well. Change the tempo here as well. And right, you can even like change the tempo over time if you wanted to. Right, you can have it curve and stuff and get really crazy. I have done this before in a song where I changed the tempo. We're going to keep that there. So generally, you're not going to be changing the tempo, but that is where we want to set the tempo. And there's different configurations too of this like track header here. So we got custom. We can see like beats and project. So we got the tempo there. We can see what key it is in. So if you want to choose the key, you can do that here as well. And we can also customize this too. And so when it comes to Logic Pro, you really have, in all DAWs, you really have two main windows or panes. You have the arrangement window, which is what we're seeing here. It's the timeline. It's where you're going to put in your sounds and your tracks and your recordings. And that's where all your instruments will be here. Over on the left side here, you have ways to affect those sounds. So you get your sound, basically your sounds here, and then a way to affect those sounds over here. And then if you click this button up here, we see the mixer window. So this is meant to like emulate one of those big mixing console desks that you see in like recording studios. And so this is where you can see everything at a glance, adjust volume, adjust effects of everything, and so on, panning. So then how do you create tracks and add tracks? So it's very simple. You just go up to this plus button up here and you can add more sounds. Alternatively, we could like duplicate what we already have here. So it's going to copy any effects you have on there, right? So if we have, say, this EQ on here, and if I right click this, I can just do delete track. So if we're on here and we hit duplicate, now you can see it has the same EQ plugin on it here. And then once we're here, we can also change the instrument over here. So we can see that right here's the electric piano. I could go down here to instruments. I could choose something else. I could do this free Tyrell N6, right? And then the same thing, if we're gonna add it here, here's where we can add, you know, different instruments. Go down here to AU instruments, and then here's all the different instruments you have installed in your computer. You can find them here. There's also different Logic instruments here. And additionally, you can also have these session players, which is really cool. So you could add in like a session drummer, and they're just going to like have a drum performance already pulled up for you. And there's different types of drums, right? You got electronic, you got hip hop, you got alternative. I'm using modern 80s here. And there's different presets here: dot matrix, hoverboard, jewels and gems, neon nostalgia, player one. So we can hear how this sounds. And there's different ways to customize this and stuff, which I won't go into in this video because that's going to be a little bit more in depth. But you can see you can get some really cool sounding tracks up and running pretty fast. We could do a session bass player. Try like disco slap. See what that would sound like. So if we don't like that, we could do intro rock. And you can see the chords across the top here. So we could change these chords if we don't like these. So again, we can hit this drop down arrow here and we can change the chords here. So we can do chord progressions. So there's actually like chord progressions we can pull up here. So we got 1, 6, 4, 5. Maybe we do that. So here we can right click on that and just change the chords. So we can just do like C major there. And that clicking is that metronome over here. So we can just turn that off by clicking on that if we don't like that. You can bring down the complexity if that's too busy. And obviously you don't have to use session players. You can just create your own performances as well. So then if we pull up this Tyrell here, we could find like a cool chord preset or something. If we go over to the effects over here, we can go to the MIDI effects. This is effects that you can apply to MIDI tracks only versus audio. Audio would be like what you record through your microphone or through your interface with a guitar. And then MIDI is like all these virtual stuff. MIDI stands for musical instrument digital interface. Don't really need to know that, but just know that it's like virtual stuff because it's great because after you play the performance, you can then move the notes around anywhere you want. So if we listen to this, so with MIDI here, like we can use my keyboard here and I can play notes. I'm playing it on my keyboard, or we could even like come in here and draw it in if we wanted to, right? I just right click, create MIDI region, double click on this, and now I can like draw in notes if I wanted to. So you could do like follow the pattern we're doing. So we have like a C here, G, A minor. And if we move to the top right corner here, we see this little circle icon. We can just drag this out to repeat it, which is really handy. And let's see if we can find a different sound here. So I might decide I don't like that bass. I can delete it, or an alternative, if I want to leave it here in case I might want to use it later, I can just right click and do mute. So that's muted now. And I can, again, like duplicate this track, option click, move that down. And let's say I want this to be like a bass, drop it down an octave. And now we can pull up our synth over here and we're going to find a bass sound, interesting sound. And what we can do is we can like add an arpeggiator to this. So we can go in here to the MIDI effects and there's a bunch of cool ones in here. I really like the arpeggiator here. I use this a lot. And then let's do it like 8th note. And we're going to hear how this sounds now. So now you can hear the note playing over and over. We've already got something going really fast here. And by the way, all these plugins I'm pulling up, these are also known as VSTs, which stands for Virtual Studio Technology. That's just basically the file type. AU is the same thing, only it's formatted for Mac. So that's where like if you were to come in here and you see AU instruments, that's the same thing as like a VST. It's just AU is formatted for Mac. So if you are installing plugins on your computer and you're using a Mac computer, VST3 work well, but AU is the best. So I usually only install like the AU versions of plugins on my computer. So then how do you add effects? So this is really easy, right? We got this, we'll solo this, right? Get our mute solo button here. We're gonna solo the chord here. And if we go over here to the left hand, we can see where you can put in your effects. So we can put in, say let's pull up a reverb. A great free reverb I've installed is this Tau Reverb plugin. So if we listen to this, you can really hear that reverb. And so that's great, but sometimes the downside of putting an effect right on here in the insert slot is now you are kind of competing with the what's called the dry or the unaffected sound, because as you turn up the what's called the wet or the affected sound, it kind of drowns out the original sound. So what we can do is we can actually use a send here instead. So I can do no plugin here, so we can click here. We already have a couple in here by default, but we can choose a bus. Doesn't matter what one you choose. This is a little bit more advanced of a topic for which bus you can choose. But let's just say we do bus 20 for now, and then I can put the reverb here. So I can do, again, that like Tau Reverb plugin. And for here, we're gonna have this be all the way wet. I'm gonna turn the dry all the way down. And then we can turn this knob here, and this way we are sending a copy, part of a copy, really. If you have it at 100%, it's a full copy, but we're sending a part of a copy over there to be affected, and then it's coming back and being blended with the dry sound, so we can hear how that sounds. So that's why this is really great to use. Maybe be a little bit easier to hear with like the drums here. So we could send it to the same reverb. So you can hear in the foreground, the drums are the same, just now you hear also that copy of the reverb in there too, and right? And the cool thing about on the when you use these sends here, these are called sends or buses, and they go to this, they create like an auxiliary track here. We can add other things to these, so we're adding different layers to the effect. So right, we can like put in this filter here and cut off all the low frequencies so that the kick isn't being affected by that reverb. You can hear all those low, muddy, it gets really muddy. So now we're only hearing the highs. Now we're only hearing the mids. If we pull it back more, now it's a pretty dry, nice, clean drum kit sound, but you're getting little splashes of reverb on the mids there. That's pretty cool. All right, so we're about halfway through the tutorial now. I just wanted to pause to take a breath and let you know, you don't need to feel overwhelmed at all. We're going pretty fast, but this is really easy to use, and the more you use it, the more you'll get the hang of it. And since you made it this far, I also want to give you a free gift, which is my mixing cheat sheet. And so if you don't know anything about mixing, this gives you a proven step-by-step process for how to take your raw recordings or your raw songs and actually turn them and make them into professional sounding tracks that you can upload to Spotify and have them stack up against your favorite artists. Not only does it show you what to do first, second, third, and so on when you go through mixing, but it even gives you handy little cheat sheets to let you know how to go about compressing and EQing your various instruments. So this is really awesome, really great free tool for you. And you can grab by clicking in the description below or go to orpheusaudioacademy.com/mixing checklist. Now, if you want a more in-depth tutorial on Logic and all the different things you can do with it, then I highly recommend you check out the Lander courses. You can see here, we have courses on just about everything, right? Music production, instruments and gear, music business, genre, music theory, and so on. But they also have DAW tutorials, including Logic Pro. You can see all the different courses on here just for learning Logic Pro, which is pretty awesome. So you could sign up just for the courses if you want, which is $5 a month. You could get the Lander Studio plan and get the distribution that lets you get your music onto streaming platforms, mastering, samples, plugins, and more, including the courses if you just pay a little bit extra every month, like an extra $4 or so. And you can even get 20% off your first year when you use my link. Just go to orpheusaudioacademy.com/Lander to get 20% off your first year with Lander Studio. All right, so now let's look at how we move around inside of Logic. So up top here, you got these little sliders here, so we can, kind of zoom out by going to the left or zoom in by going to the right, and see it's going to make the little tracks bigger. And then we have this other slider here, and this, again, moves in or moves out that way. So pretty simple. If you have a magic mouse, you can kind of swipe with your finger left and right, or like a mouse that has like one of those roller balls. Otherwise, you can hold down Shift and you can use the scroll wheel to move left and right, or obviously the scroll wheel will go up and down if you don't hold down Shift. And if I hit the space bar, which is play, it's automatically going to go to the front of this cycle range. So if I hit the space bar, boom, it starts at the beginning of the cycle range. If I were to cycle here, it'll start there. If I turn it off, then it's just going to go to wherever the playhead is, which is this big yellow line thing. That's your basic navigation. Now, hotkeys. Knowing a few hotkeys is really going to make your life easier inside of Logic Pro. Number one is Command S. So we can hit Command S, and it's going to automatically save. I've not saved this project before, so it's going to prompt me to title it. So we'll say Logic Pro Tutorial, and boom, it's saved. And anytime I hit Command S now, it's just going to save it automatically. Now, the good news is Logic is already saving for you in the background. I've had many times where something's come up, my computer's crashed or something in Logic's crashed, and I don't lose anything. Maybe I'll lose like the last like 10, 20 seconds of what I did, but otherwise it usually saves pretty frequently on its own, but still a good idea to go ahead and save it yourself. Another thing is option clicking. This is a huge one I use all the time, and I get a lot of questions about this, like how am I moving something? So I just click on this, hold down Option on my keyboard, and I can move the same thing. And that is so handy. Of course, there's copy and paste, Command C to copy. So Command C, and then Command V to paste. Another big one is undo, Command Z. So I can move that and be like, oh, I didn't want to do that. I can do Command Z and it undoes it. Undoes it. Now, another cool thing you can do is you can set the cycle range or the locators by the region marker. So say I have this drum performance over here, and I could, drag through here. But I could also alternatively just click on it and do Command U, and it's going to put it there. Or right, if I click on this, boom, it moves it over there instantly for you. Now we can also zoom in or zoom out in more smaller increments by using Command and the arrow keys. So I'm holding down Command and hitting the down arrow, up arrow, left, right, and that's going to have a good way to help change your view. And then finally, there's a bunch of other hotkeys you can learn, but just kind of basic ones. Huge one is just A. Hitting the A key, and that brings up the automation view here, because your automation is huge in music production. So if you want to change like panning over time or volume or so on, that's a little bit more advanced. That's another tutorial, but just so you know, A just brings up the automation, and we can pull up multiple automation lanes by just hitting the plus icon here, or the X to remove it. Next, this takes us to mouse tools, and these are huge. So here are the different mouse tools you have. So the left button here is your left click, and then the right one over here is your command click. So this is where like your scissor tool would be if you want to cut. So we can do that, cut like that. We have the join tool, so we can grab these together, and there's a little glue. We can join it back together. The marquee tool and the automation curve tools are really handy for when you're working with automation, but that's a future video. Now, how do you get sounds into Logic? Well, this is really simple. We can just click and drag in samples. So here's a guitar loop, so I could just grab this and just drag it right in. And right, if I don't want that, I can just delete that. And then there's also MIDI, which I already showed you how to do that. Right, you just hit the plus button here, choose MIDI, and then we can play it on our keyboard. Right, if we're playing here, my keyboard, I'm playing the keyboard. Or we can alternatively draw stuff in. Right, here's the pencil tool. That's command click, drag in stuff. So holding down command, I can draw in stuff like that. Then there's recorded audio. So how do you go about recording audio? So you would go over here, we go to audio instead, and then we have to choose the input. So on your interface, if you're using what I have an interface, I only have 2 inputs. So I gotta choose either 1 or 2. So this is right now stereo, so it's both of them. You're likely gonna be recording mono. I mean, you're plugging your microphone into one of the inputs. So I'll click this to make it mono. And then are you plugged into the first one or the second one, right? If your interface is different, has more inputs and outputs, you would just select whatever input you were plugged into. This microphone, I believe, is input 1. So then if I hit input monitor here, which is the I, this is what would allow me to hear myself. Then I can see the audio here. It sounds weird because I'm hearing myself double. And that's because there's a little bit of latency. So again, if we have latency, we want to go up here to settings to audio, and we want to reduce that buffer size. So now if I hit apply, that should remove, so now there's a lot less latency on there. I'm going to turn that off so I'm not distracting myself. And then you just hit the R button to record, and then we hit up here to record. And now I'm recording. Ta-da! Look at that. You can see the waveforms. I am recording. And then hit stop to stop recording. And it's also important to set your volume levels when you're recording. So I'm really loud right now. You don't want to be too quiet either. So you want to be above 24 for sure, maybe around 20. So probably the 12 to 20 range is like ideal. And if we go back to the mixer, one last thing, you have your stereo out here. So this is where all these other tracks, everything's being summed to this track here. This is where your stereo out is going to be. So if you want to put on plugins that affect all of your tracks, this is where you would do it. And then if you're ready to export, you just go up to File, Bounce, and then Project or Section. And then you can set the locators up here where you want, what section of your song you want to bounce. So if we did that, we go to Bounce, Project or Section. And then we have our settings here. So we want to do, if we want to do a lossless file here, like a WAV file, we do PCM. You also have MP3 here. So if we wanted to do that, we would hit OK. Then here you're choosing where you want to bounce it to. And then you can hit bounce, and then it would actually start exporting your track. So that's everything you need to know to get started with Logic and create amazing songs, even if you're a complete beginner. Now, if you're serious about music production and you want to know how to actually go about producing pro quality tracks from home, even if you have budget equipment, even if you're a complete beginner, then I highly recommend you check out my Radio Ready Record course. I'll have that linked below in the description, or you can go to orpheusaudioacademy.com/RRR. And this walks you through everything you need to know step by step to create amazing music from home. Everything from what gear you need, how to set up your home studio, how to go about writing and arranging and composing your songs, to then how to go into mix your songs. It even breaks down how to use all the different tools, how to use them, when to use them, how to actually go about mixing your track start to finish and mastering your track as well, so you're ready to release it to the world and it sounds amazing. So if you want to learn more about this, just click in the description below or go to orpheusaudioacademy.com/RRR. With that, if you want to check out the next video of my Saddest Studio Ever series, just click the box on the screen right now, and that will take you to a video where I actually go about writing a song from scratch and I show you how to do it. So it's very simple and easy. See you over there.